financial statement.
For the direct impact, yes, we've reported a loss. We'll continue to discharge our mandate. This is not going to impair our ability to continue to fight inflation. So we will continue on the part of having stable inflation and ensuring financial stability in the economy.
The Ministry of Works and Housing has been directed to consider disposing of the Saglemi housing project covering 1,506 units to a private sector entity. President Akufo-Addo, who gave the directive at a sword-cutting ceremony to commence a national affordable housing program, emphasized that attempting to complete the project would have incurred more debt.
The government has to raise additional financing to the tune of 46 million United States dollars to complete the off-site infrastructure works, that is water, electricity, and storm drains to mitigate flooding. Further, 68 million United States dollars are required to complete the buildings and other essential on-site infrastructure works.
The minority in Parliament have described the Pokwase affordable housing project as illegal since it has no parliamentary approval. Addressing the media, MP for Bodi and former Deputy Housing Minister Samson Ahi criticized the President for what he termed his flagrant disregard for due process.
This particular project is supposed to be laid in Parliament today. This has not been done. If you have presented such a document to Parliament for approval, it has not even been laid. Yet we are there cutting sword to commence work. What does that mean?
Interior Minister Ambrose Derry says the police are on the heels of the other suspects involved in the Billion van attack in Ablekuma, resulting in the killing of a police officer. He adds that their service is in the process of establishing shooting ranges to train Ghanaians with licensed guns on how to shoot.
You do know that we've made sure that we've started with registration of arms, even for the security agencies. We've done it for the police, we've done it for the immigration, and we continue to do that. But what I want to emphasize is that we're taking steps to check it, and the police are very soon going to open a shooting range where they will train all those who are armed, who have been given permission. But those who haven't been given permission would be dealt with according to law.
A slump in awareness creation about the dangers of HIV and AIDS due to funding challenges must have caused an increase in infections in the country. Over 16,000 new infections were recorded last year alone, 2,000 cases more over that of last year.
We want to see a much sharper decline, a much steeper decline for us to achieve epidemic control by the year 2030. But as it looks, it is not promising at all. And so we have to continue, doubling our efforts to ensure that we reach the coverage levels.
Government has to raise additional financing to the tune of 46 million United States dollars to complete the off-site infrastructure works, that is water, electricity, and storm drains to mitigate flooding. Further, 68 million United States dollars are required to complete the buildings and other essential on-site infrastructure works.
Well, so that's President Akufo-Addo there saying that on the assessments that they've done and taken into consideration the project location and viability, Cabinet directed the Minister of Works and Housing Francis Asensobuachi, to explore the possibility of loading the Saglemi housing project at the current value to the private sector to complete at no further cost to government. That's in addition to some of the things that you heard him say, that if they had opted to complete Saglemi, it was going to cost much more money. And so doing an assessment, they decided rather to start a whole new affordable housing project. And this point about offloading Saglemi to the private sector was like 2-3 months ago, and we don't have updates on it as yet. What we do know now is that the issues about criminality and otherwise are being handled in the court of law. And Collins Dauda appeared on the 26th of July, just sometime last week, on this Saglemi matter. But this government believes that based on their assessment, they want to start a whole new housing, affordable housing project. 8,000 housing units. We've been on this path before. This is not the first time. Recall, sometime in 2006, President John Ejekum Kufuor started an idea of some 5,000 housing units. That did not come to fruition. Then this Saglemi. Then now we're having another one. We've had a number of affordable housing units dotted across the country. There are other things that people who are in this real estate sector are asking even before government gets into this project proper. Sword has been cut, but we've been speaking to some real estate experts and members of the Committee on Works and Housing in Parliament. This is what some of the questions they're asking. First, the element of affordability. Who defines what affordability really is in this instance, as we are talking about this housing, affordable housing for Ghanaians? Affordability, based on whose definition? Are we taking into consideration the minimum wage of the large majority middle-class Ghanaian worker? The value for money audit, whether that has been done, with the details of it, has it been made available to Parliament? The feasibility of this project, whether really taken into consideration all what has happened in other affordable projects that we have started and committed the taxpayers' money to. Feasibility, price comparative advantage, and we will come to that because that ties into the affordability element, and then marketability, presence of other amenities, and in fact, the location. Because we've done everything Accra, so everybody, wherever you live, you still have to drive, come to work in Accra, and so on. So Pokwasi, right? Pokwasi. Think about that, okay? Now, let's look at these two elements. Affordability and price comparative advantage as to whether this affordable housing, national affordable housing, if you compare it to private sector players who are in the real estate industry and building houses, do the prices really check out? And why will this be the option for homeowners? Now, this is where the issue comes up. The cost of the yet to be built affordable houses under this national affordable housing project, which was the sword that was cut today by President Kufuor, these are the proposed costs of the housing units. This is according to this information we got from the Works and Housing Committee of Parliament. That's the source of this information you're seeing on the screen. Studio apartment, $13,800. The cedi equivalent as at the prevailing rate of the dollar, that's 12 cedis, is 165,600. Studio apartment, that's like one room, you know, and then you have an open kitchen in there, you know, and together with your bed. It's not like a hall. It's one room. That's studio. And then you have one bedroom that you can call chamber and hall with a kitchen, right? That's cost $20,700. The cedi equivalent is $248,400. That's affordable. These are the affordable housing units, the ones yet to be built. The two-bedroom, the cost, according to what the Works and Housing Committee gave us, $34,500. Cedi equivalent at the 12 cedis to the dollar rate now, 414,000. 3-bedroom, $42,550. Cedi equivalent of 510,600. That's that you see there. 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom studio the apartment. This is the cost. Now, does this qualify to be in the realms of affordability for the ordinary Ghanaian, right? If we are looking at the definition of affordability based on the state of your pocket, right? And if you look at the TUC's own account, that the highest pension that you can even retire with as a public servant is almost about 142,500. So even that, you still need more money to get a studio apartment. If you are retiring with, and your whole pension, you use it to buy a studio apartment. So really, who defined this affordability element and the pricing? Because this is going to be private sector led, so you know why there's that element of, cost balancing. But we leave this to you, right? Are these figures affordable, these amounts, for the affordable housing that the sword was cut for today? This is how much it's going to cost. Are these affordable? We will confirm all this because we're going back to the source of this information. That's the Works and Housing Committee of Parliament. They have some documentation on this submitted to them, and they know it. Are these affordable? That's a big question we're asking tonight. And to take into consideration the fact that even if you're going to go for a mortgage at 34%, 35%, 40% now, would you be able to afford as a public sector worker? And some banks are not even giving mortgages if you are earning 6,000 or below. They won't give you. Even that, if you have to get more money, you have to take like 15, 20 years mortgage to get this amount of money. So affordability, where does it really lie? Who determines that? Stay with me, going to get into that. But take a listen to President Akufo-Addo again, because we'll go back to the committee, the ranking member on the Works and Housing Committee of Parliament, to get some answers on this matter. Take a look.
Order paper, page 8, under laying of papers. This particular project is supposed to be laid in Parliament today.
Government has to raise additional financing to the tune of 46 million United States dollars to complete the off-site infrastructure works, that is water, electricity, and storm drains to mitigate flooding. Further, 68 million United States dollars are required to complete the buildings and other essential on-site infrastructure works.
Well, so let's stay a bit further on this, right? Because already we're getting a number of you asking questions about these figures. And the Honorable Vincent Opong Asamoah is a ranking member on the Works and Housing Committee of Parliament. He's joining us on the telephone. Thank you for joining us on Ghana Tonight. President Akufo-Addo is saying that, in fact, the government had opted to rather complete Saglame housing project instead of starting this new one, which sword was cut for. The state was going to incur more costs. 68 million, 48 million, and so on. Are these details available to you, the Works and Housing Committee, the evaluation that was done, reason why they want to start a new one?
We knew Nonado wasn't going to complete that project because, he's in the 7th year of his administration, and we knew that wasn't going to happen. And he wanted to start something afresh. And our concern, in fact, we raised a concern about a new housing unit, not because of the fact that they've not completed Saglame, because we knew they were not going to do that. But we wouldn't want a situation where a similar fate of Saglame will happen. I'm saying this because you know the difficulty with the government when it comes to financial issues. If you go to the site where the sword cutting was made, and then if you look at the contractual agreement that is yet to be signed with this foreign company that's supposed to deliver about 1,600 housing units. The government is going to provide the land. Even the valuation report of the land, he has not provided the valuation report. We don't even know the value of the land that he's offering. Besides that, the offsite infrastructure, i.e. roads, water, electricity, and all these things are supposed to be provided by the government. And once I mentioned this, if you call to mind of Saglame, these were some of the issues. Government was supposed to provide this. Government couldn't provide. So the contractor had to use part of the money that was supposed to provide for the housing units to provide some of these facilities. At the end of it, we all know the situation was Saglame at the moment. So we wanted to be very sure whether government have the resources to provide the land, the offsite infrastructure that I earlier on mentioned. And once they have been able to do that, they are saying government's stake in the project is 40%. 40%, our expectation is that once you have been able to provide about 1,000 units, government is supposed to get 400 units out of that, so that the private developer bringing in the $56.7 million will have 600 units of those housing structures, so that they can sell it at a price that they can recoup their investment. But in the case of government, because it's the state, because let me quote this, the studio type is going for $13,800. One bedroom apartment is going for $20,700. Two bedroom is $34,500. Three bedroom is going for $42,550. My brother, if you have this money and you want to get decent accommodation in Ghana for private developers, so you can get this.
Indeed, that's where the issue is, because you just did the reference to the private sector real estate person who's also building at, in some cases, very lower cost than what we have just seen. So you're actually confirming the prices that we put out there that is coming from you, the Works and Housing Committee, that this 13,800 and so on that we put out there, it's a reflection of what you have there as the cost of affordable housing.
Exactly that. This is the contractual agreement that they are going to enter with this foreign company, and it extends to all the other four other local companies that are also going to participate in this project. So these are the prices. So what we are saying is that if you are giving land and you are providing all the valuation report of the land you have not provided to Parliament, how much you are putting in the provision of this water, the roads and other things. You are not even giving us a clue about that. You only quoted the fact that you have 40% stake in there. When you go to other jurisdictions, government have land, usually they engage private developers and say, okay, you can build 1,000 housing units. This is the valuation report of what the government is putting in that investment. After you have done it, you have put up 1,000 units, government will take 500 of the units, and you, the private developer, you go ahead, and then you sell your portion. Government gets it and can reduce it so that it can be affordable to at least the vulnerable.
But you see, that's where it is. And, you know, I don't know who determines affordability or how you define this, but because questions come back to you, Parliament, you are saying that the motion for the approval by Parliament for this project, which the President cut short for, is yet to be moved?
They have not moved it yet. It's yet to be moved, but they've gone ahead to cut it short. But you know, the reason why I'm quiet about that is that there's only one contractor, which is not a Ghanaian. It's a foreign contractor, so he needs parliamentary approval for it to go out. But the evaluation report, at least, we need to get it clear. The land, government stake in the project should be clear, and Parliament should have all these evaluation reports so that we can be clear that even the 40% that you are putting, we are not being shortchanged.
See, Mr. Soma, one thing I want you to do, because you are the ranking member on this Works and Housing Committee, is that we want to find out how the affordability is determined, because these prices that we are putting up there are not affordable. So what do you take into consideration? I think that's one of the questions that would have you, the members of the Works and Housing Committee, ask the minister or government when this matter eventually comes before the House and a motion is laid or moved for it as well, because this is not affordable, is it?
13,008 for studio. 1 bedroom is 20,700. 2 bedroom is 34,500. 3 bedroom is 42,550. And the president is telling that this is affordable because to them it's affordable. How many Ghanaians will be able to afford this? And they call this affordable. After they've taken our land, we have provided roads, we have provided water, we have provided a lot of other amenities, and they are selling it at this cost to us. So all that we are demanding is that get us the valuation report. At the end of it, if they build 8,000 units, government should take the 40% of that, and they can reduce the prices for the ordinary Ghanaian to buy. That's what we are demanding. We are not being, because we are in opposition, we are responsible opposition, and we are working for Ghana. So we want to seek the interest of everyone. So that's our position.
Well, okay, so please ask those questions on our behalf, right? We want to understand what was taken into consideration to arrive at these, the cost of these housing units, which has been classified as nationally affordable, and the project sought cut for it already. Okay, so help us with those answers when this matter is eventually tabled before Parliament. But thank you. Vincent Opong Asamoah is ranking member on the Works and Housing Committee of Parliament. Let's hear from you whether this fits within the realms of affordability based on your definition. And we make reference to the wage levels of the large chunk of the middle class in this country, and juxtapose that with the cost of these housing units. And clearly, it raises fundamental questions about the understanding of affordability in this real sense of the word. But stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, the Bank of Ghana has been explaining the circumstances under which it posted over 60 billion cedis losses in 2022. But does it answer all the questions lingering? There are some matters coming up. We're going to engage experts to interrogate the Bank of Ghana's response to these losses posted on their books. It's very, very interesting and quite worrying development, to say the least. We'll be back shortly after this quick break.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint, and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, 1 bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Everybody knows Acrobato. And if you know Acrobato, it means you know Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is my pillar. Let's hear what others are saying about Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Who will be careful Endpoint one?
Just na me ankasa me period no say problems wom. Ntina ma wo ho idea ma me papa just na nya asem ketewa. Na me coin point no mo hwe me mogya mu no mo hwe bibia na so mo meduro. Mo meduro me fire no. Ene ma won kura mienu. Foforo kwa na mkwan mu a eba.
Head everything yourself.
Me ma me no adwodwo eda ho a wontumi nante. And then the end point, or Mamma Nura, and then the white dear, what's me a sorry ananti.
That's end point for you.
Hello. Hey, what?
Okay.
A free bra with the end point, what does it? I'm a choir. Me Joseph say my name Koye and pass on my name and then Magina Sabema. Now, me be here for the one in Jarissa.
You heard everything. I have secret. End point is my secret. End point homeopathic clinic. I'm free.
Listen, I'm around. Some many men say, "No man to me uncle school." Many pado, someone so made the quite be an army who I say, and I'm a ferry.
Now, in order to curtail the flow of a monthly period, some of the girls here use anything from rags, old clothes, toilet papers, even baby diapers, or literally anything that can absorb the flow. She's at the moment experiencing her monthly flow and also wearing a rag to absorb the flow because she cannot afford a pad.
My mom wasn't having money, so I could use napkin during my period, so I could stay home for 1 week.
Beyond the issue of they even have to beg for or have to have a sexual relationship with people to be able to afford it, their right to education is also at stake.
The provision of free sanitary pads for girls in deprived areas of the country is a must.
How do we have luxury taxes on something as basic as a sanitary pad?
It's a cardinal sin.
This is unacceptable.
Period.
My Period is Not a Shame. A documentary by Godwin Asineba airs on Wednesday, August 2 at 9 p.m. on TV3, TV3 Ghana, across social media, and 3news.com.
10 valiant men, all poised to battle for their bragging right.
Old wine is sage, improves as time goes on. The stars have aligned for us in this moment. Our time is now. We did not come to first hour shows. We came with our own. Fresh power, phenomenal strength, new and never seen before.
Who takes the title? Ghana's Strongest, the power to do.
Catch the new season of Ghana's Strongest Sunday at 4 p.m. only on TV3. Ghana's Strongest is powered by Gasem, the nation builder. Brought to you by Mixi Choco, Channel Hot,
Deluxy Acrylic Paint,
Drugnet. We are at that time of the year, and the much anticipated trade and exhibition fair is here. It's the Western Trade Fair, the August 2023 edition. It will be massive and engaging. Companies, small and medium scale enterprises, join the fair. Let's network and grow our business together. Date Sunday 30th July to Sunday 6th August 2023. Time 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day. Venue the Takra Demo. Activities include seminar, live band, gospel show, fashion night, and many more. The general public is invited. Entry and admission is absolutely free. For sponsorship, booking, and inquiries, kindly call or WhatsApp 0245 787 886, 0244 244 027, 0243 438 251. Partner Takrade Mall. The Western Trade Fair is powered by Connect 97.1 FM. Connect Western Trade Fair. A Gwedifu one bronya.
I've been watching you from a distance.
Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. Now, the Bank of Ghana says the domestic detection program undertaken by government is to blame for the over 60 billion CD losses on its books, adding that strategies have been rolled out to help recoup the losses. This is something we established yesterday. My colleague Dennis Wadam did a fantastic job getting into that detail. But the Bank of Ghana has been responding after this backlash and questions were raised as to how now the auditors of the Bank of Ghana are actually recommending that it be recapitalized. In fact, that's how the state of affairs really look like, that they've lost so much money. And the restructuring of the government debt as well led to over 50 billion cedis lost. Now, this is the head of research at the Bank of Ghana. My colleague, Martin Esiedudate, sat with him earlier. And this is what he said.
What kind of direct or indirect impact would it have on the Ghanaian economy?
For the direct impact, yes, we've reported a loss. We'll continue to discharge our mandate. This is not going to impair our ability to continue to fight inflation. So we will continue on the path of having stable inflation and ensuring financial stability in the economy.
There are calls already that, for instance, considering the fact that you've recorded these losses, the governor should resign. Is that a position you share?
No, I don't think we are there yet. If you look at the reasons that are ascribed, there were internal and external factors, and especially, as I indicated, is the impact of the domestic debt exchange that has impacted our balance sheet. We all know what the debt exchange, why it came about, because it's a fiscal problem. So it's the debt exchange that has caused. Should the governor resign because of a debt exchange issue? I don't think so.
My final question would border on some of the specific components captured in the report. For instance, we have motor vehicle maintenance running where in excess of 130,000 Ghana cedis was.
We should also bear in mind that in the year 2022, crude oil prices increased significantly. So these are significant increases. And when fuel forms a very big component of your vehicle maintenance and you are involved in such a huge operation, it impacts on your expenses this way. But let me just share some statistics with you.
Briefly, sir, briefly.
Yeah, briefly. The fuel expenses that we've seen since 2019 has hovered around 90% of total vehicle maintenance. And for 2022, it is 94 or let's say 95%. That hasn't changed so much in terms of percentage of fuel from the vehicle maintenance. It's still about the same.
Right.
The problem has been the export prices that we face. Remember, we also buy the fuel from the market like any other human being. And this is what has accounted for this. But I think to sum things up, what has impacted the central bank's balance sheet, let me stress the point that it is the impact of the domestic debt exchange. If you isolate the impact of the domestic debt exchange from what has happened, we wouldn't have reported of this huge negative. Yeah.
Right. See, the question is that a lot of people were warning the Bank of Ghana and continuously financing government business. And so maybe if that advice had been taken, wouldn't get to this point where the central bank will find itself in this situation because of a domestic debt exchange program, right? But that's Dr. Philip Abradu Otu, Director of Research at the Bank of Ghana. They released, I'm talking about the central bank, released some FAQs earlier today. But take a look. And Professor John Gachi will join us shortly on Zoom on this matter. So the huge losses we're talking about, the over 60 billion cedis loss that the central bank posted, said it was driven by impairment of the holding of marketable government stocks, that non-marketable instruments and exposure to cocoa board, that they had actually been lending to cocoa board for so much that. And you see, the Bank of Ghana also suffered 50% principal haircut because they had also invested in government instruments, 64.5 billion cedis. That is the fundamental question here. You know what? The Bank of Ghana is asking commercial banks that were hit by the domestic debt exchange program to submit recapitalization plans by end of next month. The auditors of the Bank of Ghana also are saying that, look, their situation is not good. So they need some recapitalization, for the lack of better expression, some capital injection. Professor John Gachi is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. Professor Gachi, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. So you've heard Dr. Philip Otu with the Bank of Ghana that, well, they are not set up to make profit, really. And so these losses you are seeing is because of DDEP. Will that wash?
No, that is not correct position. Even if the Bank of Ghana is not set up to be a profit-making vehicle, it is not set up to be a loss-making vehicle. So this fact must be put on the table. And it's not for nothing that auditors audit the financial statement of an institution. It's supposed to assess whether the financial statement is prepared in accordance with the policy and standards, and also to determine the financial health of the institution. So when you are making a loss and the magnitude is deep, and that occurred for some time, especially in one financial year, the loss is so deep as we see in the Bank of Ghana's financial statement. That is to be worried about. So if the Bank of Ghana is not worried about, then that is not correct. The Bank of Ghana should not trivialize the loss position of the bank. The loss position determine a lot about the management, determine a lot about how efficient the institution is run, how efficient management itself has been. So we can compute various ratios from financial statement. Some would depict the efficiency of management. Some would depict profitability ratios and whether the institution is liquid, etc. So financial statement is very, very important for an institution. And the Bank of Ghana cannot play away with the importance of a financial statement.
In fact, and that's why we are dwelling on this, because you see the same argument is being advanced by the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, Mohamed Aminata, earlier today when he granted an interview to my colleague Balamundi, that other central banks have posted losses. They make reference to the Bank of England and so on. So if the Bank of Ghana is posting losses, it's really not a big deal. Professor Gaji?
I think the Bank of Ghana cannot take shelter from that. The reality is that it is not the same factors that cause the Bank of England, for example, to make a loss. It's not the same factor that caused the Central Bank of Netherlands to make some losses. It's not the same factors that cause the Central Bank of the US to limit some of its activities. You see, for about 3 years running before COVID started, but the Bank of Ghana was lending in excess of the regulatory requirement to the Central Bank. That was a breach, and many people raised issues about that, but the Central Bank will not listen. They continue with that, and they escalated that during COVID period. And so you see the audit report, they have mentioned those things. If the Bank of Ghana did not take steps to overly take up the liabilities of government, there was no way that the government was going to declare a default for which impairment will be done. So it is just about Bank of Ghana throwing away its independence of applying brakes to what it was doing. So what caused those central banks to declare a loss over a certain period of time is not the same factors that cause the declaration of loss by the Bank of Ghana. So those reasons cannot absorb the Bank of Ghana. Simply, the Bank of Ghana slept in its regulatory activities and was seen as government and was seen as part of fiscal management of government. That was the problem.
You see, another point that the Director of Research of the Bank of Ghana makes is that this loss of over 60 billion cedis will not affect the operations of the Bank of Ghana. They can still carry out their mandate, the operational mandate. Is it that simple? I mean, in defining or understanding the impact of this particular loss they have posted?
Not that simple, and that is to undermine the reason why financial statement and audit of the same is done. Financial statements are prepared to see the health of the institution, to see whether the institution is liquid, to see whether the institution is able to pay its debt obligation when they fall due. It's to see whether the operational efficiency is intact. So for you to say that even though your financial situation looks bad, it doesn't have any effect on your mandate, is to beg the question. That is never true. That is never true. How will you perform your mandate when you are impaired in terms of finances? So I think what the Bank of Ghana should be doing is to appeal to the conscience of Ghanaians how long it will take to reverse the loss situation, what strategic effort they are put in place to achieve that, and appeal to Ghanaians on that line. But all those things they are saying, they try to trivialize the essence of financial statement. They try to trivialize the interests of stakeholders in an institution like a Bank of Ghana. So I think those things should not be bought. Those things should be thrown away. And we should demand from Bank of Ghana to be very practical in what has happened and carry all of us along to support them to return the bank to proper management.
The question about whether the governor should step aside or otherwise, the head of research says, look, it's not gotten to that point yet for these calls for the governor to step down to even be considered. What point will that be considered if this 60 billion loss is not the point we have to get to for the governor to think about stepping aside?
Of course, yes, but I don't want to go there because we are not, that is not part of our DNA in this country. So even if you say it, you are just wasting your time.
Okay. Professor John Gachi, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. He is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School. There are other aspects of this report, which, as we've been showing you since yesterday, we'll be spending time on in the coming days. So you understand the extent of seriousness of the situation that we're dealing with and the impact that this is going to have as well. And so stay with us in the coming days on this. But coming up next on Ghana Tonight, the academia and industry have been reacting to the media budget review presented by the Finance Minister, Kenneth Ofori-Atta, on the floor of Parliament yesterday. So one issue, that statement by the Finance Minister that the economy has turned the corner, is what has generated reactions. But take a look at this, because many of the people who depart from the Finance Minister's position make reference to this, that if the macroeconomic parameters have been reviewed downwards in the media budget review, then how can that be a justification for turning the corner? GDP growth rate down from 2.8 to 1.5, and oil GDP to 1.5 from 3.0. Inflation, the projection was earlier 18.9, now 31.1%. And gross reserves now from a little over 3 months now to less than a month. So that's where some others have raised concerns about the finance minister's optimism. But Joe Jackson is a financial analyst, is joining us on Zoom. Mr. Jackson, thank you very much for your time on Ghana Tonight. So what's the message in these macroeconomic targets that have been revised downwards as against the finance minister's optimism that this economy has turned the corner?
You know, the truth of the matter is this. The finance minister says we've turned the corner. And my understanding of turning the corner is that things are going to get much better, right? Now, the challenge with that statement and how I understand it is simply this. At the beginning of this year, at a time when the darkest storm clouds were over this country, the finance minister gave us some projections between January and December. Some projections on interest rates, etc. Some projections on inflation. And I truly think that if we've turned the corner, then those projections should be getting better. But in his own budget statement, he now says that GDP growth, which he had projected at 2.8%, his revised value is 1.5%. Inflation, which he had projected at the year end to be 18.9%, is now going to be 31.3%. Listen, our reserves, our gross reserves, which were projected at 3.3%, is now at 3.3 months, is now going to be 0.8 months. Now, let me go through all this. When he says GDP growth, he's talking about how this economy is going to grow. 1.5% in an era where inflation is, even at the end of the year, according to his target, 31.3%. Maybe all the growth is just can be attributed to inflation, that there's no real growth happening in this economy. He talks of inflation. Inflation is killing us. It's hitting your pocket. Inflation, you feel it when you go and buy a piece of frozen chicken. You feel it when you go and buy a 5-kilo bag of rice. You feel it when you go and buy fractal oil. In fact, you feel it when you go and buy wache at the road corner. What? And inflation hits all of us. And the year-end inflation has been increased from a projected 18.9% to 31.3%. Reserves, Ghana buys, we import everything. Now, at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, he said by the end of the year, we would have gotten back to 3.3 months of reserve. That means that if something goes wrong with this country, at least we have 3 months that we can run and import things without going wrong. Now he says that at the end of the year, it will be less than 1 month, 0.8 months. That doesn't sound to me like we've turned the corner. It doesn't sound to me like, it sounds like things are going to get much worse before they get better. So really, it's that statement that I have problems with. Because as for his data, every single macroeconomic parameter he stated clearly is going to worsen by the end of the year from his projections.
I see.
So but, I'm not sure about this turning the corner business. And I think that Ghanaians should be prepared for the difficult times ahead. I think that forewarned is forearmed. I think that if we know that there could be difficult times ahead, we'll be in a better place to be able to survive, to be able to cope, and maybe even prosper in these difficult times.
You know, Mr. Jackson, how worse would it get again than where we find ourselves now? I mean, if you're saying it's going to get worse and then it gets better, we're already in the worst situation. So how worse would it get again?
Apart from the one that will hit you hardest, it means that prices will continue to rise. That a year from now, if we thought prices were bad at the beginning of the year, by the time we end the year, on average, it will be 31.3% higher. Whatever you were buying for 30 cedis, by the end of the year, you'll be buying more at 42, 45 cedis. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about gross reserves. If anything goes wrong, there's no buffer. We're talking about no growth. That means no more, still no jobs, still unemployed young men, still unemployed young ladies, still graduates without jobs. It is growth that will naturally create the jobs. And that is even with all things being equal. In Ghana, we've seen growth without jobs. That you are seeing minimal or no growth, you can kiss the jobs goodbye. These are tough. If you want to know how tough things can be, this is how tough things could be. Listen, but you've got to admit, things are still better than they were at the beginning of the year. Don't be confused. At least we've signed the IMF deal. The cedi has stabilized, right? Some of our parameters are trending okay. A lot more are trending in the wrong way, but it's still much better than it could be.
But you see, the concern there, Mr. Jackson, but I thank you, is the fact that you're already preparing us for the worst ahead, you know, but then you do the comparative analysis, you see there's some improvement based on what we saw last year, but you're saying it's going to get worse. That's where the concern of the people are. But thank you for your time. Joe Jackson is the financial analyst. But before we round up, we delve straight into the happenings in Niger, where government has been toppled by the military. I'm going to show you a map right now, and it points to something really interesting, because Niger is surrounded by countries that have their own fair share of problems, right? Take a look at that. That's Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, apart from Nigeria. But then the northern part of Nigeria, you know, Boko Haram, the Maiduguri area, they're having their own problems in there as well. So you already have Nigerians in Ghana. It's another issue. And then also the military bases established in these countries as well. Muftar Momoni Mutaru is there. That's what you see there. These 6 African countries currently under military rule, Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Sudan, are all under military rule, and they all are around Niger, except Nigeria, right? Muftar, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. He's a counterterrorism analyst as well as the Security and Terrorism Unit, or that's Chief, also joining us on Zoom. Appreciate your time. Now, what I just showed there, we have natural resource-rich countries experiencing conflict and having foreign military bases in there. What's the message?
So clearly, the presence of foreign bases here and the presence of international partners here goes beyond just diplomatic relations or political relations. It relates to trade, it relates to competition for resources, and the larger geopolitical interests of those partners. And so some of these countries that we are dealing with, the situations that we are looking at in terms of the 3-4 countries that have had coup situations, all these countries have huge deposits of mineral resources, and they have military bases as well from multiple partners within the region. And so the competition here, it's beyond just normal trade. It's also to secure the economic interests, the resources, the raw materials that these countries have to be able to power their economies empower their industries. And so it's for that, strategic reason that we have these countries, present in our region in this way.
I see, but we understand that there's going to be a crucial meeting of ECOWAS tomorrow on the situation in Niger. Now, if a military action or intervention is something that you would not support, what should be the most probable option for ECOWAS in the situation that Niger is going through?
ECOWAS would need to take a few steps back, away from the July 30th declaration in terms of the intended deterrent measures against the coup leaders. They need to employ a sense of deterrence as well as a sense of diplomacy. And the bigger goal is how to walk these military leaders onto a path of democracy. How do you transition them into a path of democracy? It may be a short or medium term or long term, but it should be a kind of arrangement that has the goodwill and support of all stakeholders in this case. Of course, it's a very bad record to have this big number of coup situations happening within the region. And so it doesn't reflect, positively on ECOWAS. And so ECOWAS it wants to be seen as a tough, strong, controlling regional bloc able to deal with situations like that. Unfortunately, ECOWAS has not been tooled in terms of structure and capacity to deal with situations like that. And so we need to work with, marry diplomacy with some kind of deterrence and walking them through to be able to transition the country back onto democracy. And that is what I would be emphasizing more. There are some very credible voices and leaders around, and they could engage them to lead the efforts and ensure that we normalize the situation in Niger. I understand that the former president Buhari has a lot of goodwill in Niger. And so he could be somebody who could be consulted and engaged to lead efforts to be able to, transition the country back into normalcy, into a civilian kind of rule.
But if you look at the countries under military rule, all around Niger, except Nigeria, Burkina Faso, we have Chad, Guinea, Mali. We have Nigerians and Sudanese who are in Ghana. Even before this coup, Nigerians who are here as refugees, Malians, Guineans, and so on. Certainly, Ghana wouldn't be spared of any spillover if this situation gets out of hand, would it?
I know that these situations are independent of geography, and it has huge implications, for everyone within the sub-region. 7 years ago, we started, making the noise about the potential impact of what is happening in the Sahel and its, huge implications for even coastal states. Today, the reality is that we are bearing the brunt. We are suffering the negative effect of the Sahelian destabilization. We are having to contain huge numbers of refugees and individuals who are seeking refuge, running away from the violence in Burkina Faso. MINUSMA has left Mali, and that's a huge situation. It would further lead to more individuals seeking refuge in coastal states. If you add the situation of Niger, a kind of military situation, it would worsen it. We have not been tooled to deal with large-scale immigration, large-scale migration problems. And so that can undermine our own stability, our own security. It is early days yet, but very soon we may begin to see significant conflict situations in northern between these migrants who are seeking, the refugees who are seeking help here and the local community, because we will be competing for resources, we'll be competing for space and several other things in terms of culture and in terms of values. So these things are not isolated. It's not a Nigerian situation. It is a regional problem. It is an African problem. And we have to look at it from that perspective.
And I appreciate your time on this. Thank you so much. Muftar Momoni Mutaru is the Executive Director, West Africa Center for Counter-Terrorism and Extremism. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time here. On behalf of the rest of the team, we thank you for keeping us company here on Ghana Tonight. Join us same time tomorrow. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.